It is so good to be here. What a difference a year makes. Last time we were in San Diego that I saw you, and although I was in office 20 years ago in the House, man, I've got to tell you, it feels like I've been 3 years lieutenant governor already. I was walking by a picture of old Abe Lincoln. This was right after the Civil War. He had taken that picture, and he was looking so haggard, and I said to him just yesterday, Abe, I don't intend to look like you when this is all done. But again, it's good to be here. We're talking about serious business, and the business of the people is serious. And there's something I want to say. I saw Dave Chappelle just the other day on Saturday Night Live, his opening monologue. And what he said was this. He said, it shouldn't be this scary to talk about anything. Because, you know, the court jesters back then, they were the ones who had the ability to talk to the king, to talk to the politician about things that were hard to hear. And our comedians today really are our modern day court jesters. So when he says it shouldn't be this scary to talk about anything, it shouldn't be. So we're going to change that. And at ALEC, we talk about what we want to talk about. Don't we? Yes, we do. I want to talk to you today about education. My dad came to America, you know my story, 1963, at the height of the civil rights movement, with only $1.75 in his pocket. And actually, I'm spotting him a quarter because he couldn't remember if it was $1.50 or $1.75. Just say he had a little more than lint in his pocket. And he came here because, of course, he said this is where the jobs and the opportunities were, no matter how bad it was. And actually, he could have gone to England. It would have been easier for him to enter there because he was still a British citizen. He came on a British passport because we were still a British colony. So he took any money he could find, and he used the money to put himself through school and started his American dream, started his career. And so what could I have said to that man if I didn't succeed when he came just 17 days before Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech? When things were really bad for us. What could I say to him? I can't succeed, I'm black. Really? You know, my father's never beaten me in my life. He might have gotten the belt then. So education lifted my father out of poverty. Education lifted me out of poverty because I have to find my own way in this world. Education lifted all of us out of poverty. That's what the slaves wanted. 3 things. Number 1, their freedom. Number 2, their families reunited. Number 3, they wanted to get an education. Frederick Douglass, you know he's a Republican. Frederick Douglass said when his master learned that his master's wife was teaching him how to read and write, that he said to her, don't do that. It's against the law, number 1, and once a slave knows how to read and write, he's no good for anything. He thinks that he can achieve. So, education is where I am, and education we are going to fight for, but what type of education? Education, parental choice. It is time. We're not asking the school boards anymore. We're telling them, you are going to give us the ability to choose where our children will go to school. I did a men's prison ministry for 2 years. 72% or greater of the incarcerated are functionally illiterate. I ran a women's homeless shelter. Most of them were illiterate. There is a reason why we talk about a school-to-prison pipeline. Indeed, the NAEP scores are showing us that we're only fooling ourselves and guaranteeing our children a terrible future. In Virginia, we learned that by the time our children reach the 8th grade, when it comes to math, 35% of them who are Asian are failing. 45% of white children, 70% of Latino children. And this number brought tears to my eyes. 84% of black children cannot do math. And by the way, they almost never catch up. So, we're not asking anymore, we are demanding, we are telling them that we want school choice now. I understand we have in the room today 2 people whose successes we are building on. Ben Toma, author of the Arizona Bill, and Patricia Rucker, author of the West Virginia Bill. So we know it can be done. You've shown us the path. I support increasing innovation and opportunities for our students, whether it is lab schools, whether it is charter schools. 20 years ago, this is not my first rodeo. When I was in the House, I put in a bill to expand charter schools so that, number 1, higher ed would get involved. Number 2, immunity would also apply to them in the same way that it applies to other public schools. And then this one last piece, number 3, that we want to know not just the granting of the charter schools, but also the denials and why. You couldn't just willy-nilly deny. And my God, after 10 years in Virginia, we still only have 7. So, it shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this scary to talk about anything. School choice is the new Brown versus Board of Education fight. Because what was that fight about? It was not to get into necessarily public schools or white schools, whatever that meant. It was for a parent to decide where to send their own child to school. That was the foundation of it. The new redlining is the zip code that keeps us in our schools, and we're not having it anymore. Not at all. We have even lowered the standards of getting into higher education. 65%, we are told, 65% of the new students when they go to college need remedial education, what they should have had in high school. Something is wrong. Something is terribly wrong. You know who's not lowering their standards? Let's check the boxes. China, not lowering their standards. North Korea, not lowering their standards. Russia, Iran, India, all of these places. In fact, on the PISA test, the national test, actually the international test of all students, we find out that China is number 1. America, which is the number 1 superpower, is number 13. How long do you think that will be good? No, we're not lowering the standards any longer. We cannot be a people so transfixed and bound by the past that our children are unable to move into the future, because the world is not waiting for them. We know that. They must be ready. They must have a hope and a future. So, as Abraham Lincoln said, a house divided cannot stand. We're not going to burn down our own house. Ronald Reagan indeed said this in his speech, A Time for Choosing, 50-plus years ago. He said, "I believe that the issues confronting us cross party lines. I think it is time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us. Because if we lose freedom here, there is no other place to escape." It shouldn't be this hard, this scary to talk about something. No, America isn't perfect. We have a saying in church, and it's this: I may not be what I'm supposed to be, but I ain't what I used to be. And that's America, isn't she? No, she's not perfect, and she was created by imperfect people. But we're going to keep her. I'm not going to trade her, and I know you wouldn't either. We have got to do well for our children so that when they ask, what did you do? We can say we fought and we kept fighting so that you would have a hope and a future. Because they're depending on us to do well. Because, again, as President Reagan said, takes one generation. That's it. And in fact, before him, Abraham Lincoln said, the policy of the classroom in one generation will be the policy of the government in the next. We see it before our eyes, and we are saying, not any longer. We are going to do something about it. It's about our children. We're not asking anymore. We are demanding. Next year, we are going to be putting in a bill on school choice, and we will say to them, go ahead. Vote against it if you dare, because either way we win, because it's an election year. So God bless you. Keep fighting. You can accomplish anything if you're willing to lose. God bless you. God bless America.